They're coming to get you, Barbara. It's not really the same kind of undead, but it's close enough.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Living dead, undead, semantics. Finally, he leaps here with another video in the Faction Wars series. If you're striving for Lydia, and you damn well should be, you'll need to 3-star every level and every faction, including the Undead Hordes. That's what we're going to look at here tonight. First, though, make sure you subscribe here at YouTube. Turn on notifications so you never miss when a video goes live. It's simple, it's free, but it does make a big difference here on the channel. There are a lot of strong champs for the Undead Hordes, including a handful that were free, such as Dark Ethel, who is a daily login reward, Morgaine, who was a fusion event champion, and Ultimate Death Knight, who was just a free limited login reward in the summer of 2022. Now, like all Faction Wars teams, you'll need to focus on their roles. You'll need at least one heavy damage dealer, at least one crowd control champ laying down debuffs, at least one crowd control champ hitting multiple enemies at once. Now, ideally, those two could be the same champion, but you'll also need team support by way of buffs, heals, and possibly reviving anyone who goes down. Heavy resistance is key to keep debuffs off of your team. Defense and HP should be your focus as well. Again, standard fare for all factions, not just the Undead Hordes. Now, for my team, I have a double Seeker setup. Seeker is a staple in Clan Boss because of his full team turn meter fill and increased attack, as well as his passive that puts increased defense down on the whole team whenever he's critically hit. 2 Seekers speeds this team up and keeps them in the fight, making them a full support duo. Add in Ultimate Death Knight as a massive support champ, bringing decreased defense and a passive that protects the team, redirecting damage to Ultimate Death Knight instead, and the team is already tanky. Add in Gorgorab, one of the faction's best revivers, and all we're missing is damage. Siffy the Lost Bride is a better reviver option, and in a pinch, Grinner can be used here as well. If you're missing Seekers and Death Knight, you can substitute in Vogoth for reflecting damage and Mausoleum Mage for team support. Bad Alcazar, Nekret, and Zealotah are also spectacular substitutes if you have them. For the damage in the squad, I opted for Dark Elhain because her A2 is an AoE with a strong rating. There's much better champs for damage, but she was all I needed and, more importantly, all I had. There are a handful of heavy damage dealing legendaries if you're lucky enough to pull them, including Bloodgorged, Mashalad, Rhodos the Lost Groom, or even Vlad the Nightborn. Husk and Karam can both be used as damage dealers. Frozen Banshee, who's a rare, can even be used for heavy damage when she's built properly. Now, remember, with all of these factions, you're bringing 5 champs to each battle, and based on their rules, you're going to want to build them specifically for them. So for your damage dealer, make sure your crit rate's at 100 and your crit damage is at least 200. Put them in lifesteal so that they're replenishing their HP with every hit that they do. You're going to want bolster, maybe shield sets on your support champions, and your crowd control guys probably in lifesteal, regen, or immortal, and then focus heavy on their accuracy because they're the ones that are laying down the AoE debuffs. You can do that with accuracy, perception, and then maybe some speed sets to kind of fill that out. Remember, the run towards the Lydia in Faction Wars is a marathon, not a sprint. I say that in all of these videos. You just have to start somewhere. You don't need legendaries. You don't need everybody at 60. You don't even need all epics to make these things work. You just have to start somewhere. That's the biggest thing that people do, is they are overwhelmed by what the whole Faction Wars is, and they just look at it, you know, they struggle in the beginning and they're like, it's really not worth it. But it is worth it, not just for Lydia, but for all of the resources that you claim each and every day. And because of the rotation of the way stuff opens up and closes, opens and closes, where you can only do 2 factions each day, it does make sense to slowly build this stuff. In the beginning, it's very overwhelming, but as you continue to claim more and more champions, it does get easier, and it does slow things down and make it much easier to make your way through towards the end. Once you get through the waves here, you're going to be dealing with the red boss. Now, this is another level where you can incorporate the low HP shield technique if you're struggling to keep everyone alive against the boss's massive A1. If you're struggling here, once you get to the boss, and it does cause problems, specifically on level 21, I do have a full video devoted to the low HP shield technique. So if you're interested in how and why it works, make sure you check that one out. The link is in the description. Now, I did not end up using it here for this one, but it is an option just in case you need it. Now, the other thing to remember with the faction wars is, besides starting somewhere, you're going to be changing your team throughout as you continue to do this. This is faction wars, and the full run towards 21, level 21, 3 stars in each of the factions is going to take quite a while for a lot of people, and that is perfectly fine. Don't get too frustrated or concerned if you get stuck somewhere. A lot of times it comes down to just one champion making the difference, specifically if you don't have all of those roles filled, such as damage dealers, crowd control, and support. And then depending upon the faction, some of these factions, if you are missing 1 or 2 champs, then you may have to fill in somewhere else with, like maybe instead of 2 damage dealers, you only bring 1 damage dealer and bring an extra reviver. There's also options for everybody. The teams that I use for this full series does not mean those are the only teams out there. It just means this is what I use, and I usually give you options for how you can do it in your specific team. Pay attention to the options, and then look at what you have. And a lot of times, maybe one champion brings a few things that I talk about, but you have 2 champions together that can do that. That's fine. And then maybe where I've got 2 champions, you've got 1 that takes the place of those as well. It does work out. And with this, they're always adding new champions to the game. So there could be, by the time you're watching these videos, there could be other champions in the game that fill these roles and bring something to the game that's a little bit better than what I have. Another thing to remember is masteries do make a difference. Specifically, you can go into Minotaur and pretty quickly throw 3 or 4 masteries on any of these faction wars champions, especially if they're just a champion that you're building specifically for the faction. Just a few masteries can make a difference. There's just so much you can do to continue to build these, as long as you're focusing on the main 3 criteria, which is resist, defense, and HP. That is the big difference here, because remember, in faction wars, your ultimate goal is to get everybody to the final and through all alive. It's not just about beating the level, it's about beating the level with everybody still alive. That does become the major factor for a lot of people as they struggle to make their way through, is how do I get it to the final stage of this and still have everyone in the fight? And the revivers can make a big difference. Here, you can throw in a couple of grinners if you're missing one of the reviving champs. Gorgorab is perfect for this, but he does have to be built with speed and enough defense and HP to keep him through it, because overall he's kind of a squishy champ. Grinner is even worse as far as being squishy, but if you build them and kit them with the gear necessary to keep them in, it's going to make a big difference. And Ultimate Death Knight is massive, and he's free, but if you missed out on him, Vogoth is basically brings the same kind of stuff. It's a reflect damage, and he does absorb a lot of the hits that your team is coming. So now you can pay attention here. We're still on round 2, and it looks like we're struggling to keep through these. I've got the middle guy targeted, but again, this is full auto, and the struggle is just, it takes so much time with all of the counterattacks and the healing. Could be a little quicker if, now we're down to just 1. And it's just a matter of taking them out. But the counterattacks is what's slowing all of this down. To speed this up, probably heavier damage would make a difference. I don't have anybody in here other than Dark Ethel that's laying down big AoEs. The 2 Seekers are speeding things up and increasing the attack. But even if you're speeding up guys that aren't hitting that hard, it's not really making that much of a difference, which is why this is taking so much time. But again, it doesn't matter if it takes you 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or 20 minutes, as long as you're able to get 3 stars. Now, once you do make it to the boss, this boss has an A1 that targets enemy max HP. This is the issue that the low HP shield technique deals with. The red boss also has a self-cleanse and an AoE on her A2 that puts stun on everyone except 1, who then gets True Fear instead. It then grants her an extra turn with her A1. Now, these debuffs cannot be resisted, so opt for defense and HP on this one over resist. Her passive is a turn meter bump. For every 1% of HP she loses when she's attacked, her turn meter goes up 2%. That sucks. But that means that decreased speed and decreased turn meter champs will help slow her down. For all of the factions, turn meter champs definitely help, because all of these major bosses, they're all susceptible to turn meter control. You can also use speed. That is going to be a big bonus on your side to overcome her boosted turn meter. 2 Seekers here does help. Without Gorgrab's full team revive, you can either bring a cleanser and a healer, or 2, a couple of healers is going to help. Or you can try the low HP shield technique that I mentioned earlier. The red boss is all about how you build your champs first and foremost. Defense and HP need to be your highest priorities. And just a general rule, percentage. Defense percentage is more important than flat stats. HP percentage is more important than flat stats, especially when you're without a reviver. Now, if you have other factions you're struggling with, check out the whole Faction Wars series here on the channel. All of the links for the full series are below in the video description. It is just a matter of patience and working your way towards it. Now, if this information helped you out along the way in your run towards Lydia the Death Siren, please consider subscribing here on YouTube. It's a small gesture that goes a long way toward the growth of the channel. I'm Finally He Sleeps. Thanks for hanging out, and as always, as long as you keep watching, I'll keep making videos.